All right, welcome back. For you guys, this is the first time. For us, it's actually the third time trying to record this. It just hasn't worked. We've got off track, and then Sophia came down because her rest time thing went off like really early for some reason. Anyways, welcome back. Trauma drama in our life. This is another episode. Whatever.
This is
whatever
real
we're
life.
on. There's real life going on, and so we're excited to have you guys here. We're talking about. Today we wanted to talk about love bombing and what's the difference between like love bombing and like how it shows up and what is actually real, what's not real, all this kind of things. So we've had a couple of people that have sent in different questions, different ideas, different thoughts. If that's you and you want to be able to hear from our perspective, you want to be able to hear some of the stuff that we're thinking about, talking about, going through, anything like that, then just send a message in. You can email us at ben@rawmotivations.com. You can message on any of the Raw Motivations platforms. We'd love to be able to just hear, interact from you, be able to know if it's helping, if it's encouraging, anything like that. Anyway, so that's just Beal. Moving on from that. So when we're talking about like love bombing, there's this aspect of love bombing that has to do with this like idea of overt praise, overt affection, a lot of gift giving, like a lot of different things that seem like over the top. It'd be like this aspect of like someone looking outside the relationship, be like, wow, like that seems super extra. That seems over an abundance of like what would actually be normal or what would be acceptable or whatever it might be along those lines. And so it's like, wait a second, like what's going on here? And so when we talk about love bombing, a lot of times people start to wonder and start to stress when they get into a new relationship or when they're moving forward. They're like, is this love or is this love bombing? Like, which actually is it? And so we want to be able to talk through that a little bit today of just talking through this aspect of love bombing, talking through this aspect of like how it shows up and talking through just how it's shown up in like our relationship, our life. So the question that I had for you, was going through just like the idea of like what you saw in our relationship that was or wasn't like love bombing.
So early on in dating, I don't recall anything that was straight, like in my face love bombing, other than us just spending a lot of time together. Mm-hmm. We spent pretty much every single day together.
A lot of attention.
Yeah, so it was a lot of attention.
It's like love bombing in the attention aspect, like kept you from other people.
Yeah,
right?
So it kept me from doing other things, other people, or whatever. But at that time, obviously, like I didn't really mind. Like I was just like, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I remember and recall when we got married and after our honeymoon, when things started kind of starting to reveal themselves, there was several times that he would randomly just up and cook me dinner. Like you would come home from work one day and then you would cook dinner, mm-hmm. and I would be like, oh, this is new. And or like write me little like things that was not normal for him, which at the time, like, I didn't really think of it as love bombing, but then obviously when finding out that he's having an affair and mm-hmm. all of this stuff, then it's like, okay, well, all of that was like a bunch of baloney in one sense. Right. Like, it was not real or genuine or anything like that. And I think throughout those times that you were in relationships, like, there was things that you would do that I would think would be genuine, but it wasn't truly. It was more love bombing to distract me from figuring stuff out. Mm-hmm. And you would do it. I remember he would do it sometimes like at the right time. Like there was times that
like you before you'd find something out.
Yeah.
Or?
Like you would just randomly like surprise me with something and I would just be like, oh, this is sweet. And then probably like a couple of weeks later I would start being like, I would start questioning. And then something would happen. Like he would write me like a sweet little note or something to
like
try.
Keep you on the hook.
Yeah, to make me think that nothing was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was definitely in the love bombing section. And then it just got to where there wasn't really any love bombing. It was just like, I kind of already knew stuff, so it wasn't...
Which that was kind of quick. It didn't take a long time to get to that place.
Yeah. It wasn't like it continued throughout the entire span of this, and now I can't figure out what's genuine and what's not. Like that's...
Right.
This was only like a couple of years thing, and then it just kind of like diminished.
But there's an aspect of like love bombing that can be equated to like the intermittent reinforcement, like the ups and downs, the highs mm-hmm. and the lows of like, oh, like we're good, and then oh, like we're bad, or like oh, this is good, and then it's not good, and then you're like, I don't know which to actually believe or which to actually know.
I feel like that was more in our relationship mm-hmm. than actually like gift giving or words of affirmation or any of that.
Right. Gift giving, though, there was like some stuff that I would do, especially around like holidays, maybe some birthday, but especially like holidays, that a lot of times where I would like give like either good gifts or big gifts or like something like that. So there's like an aspect of that. It's not necessarily always love bombing, but there's also that piece from like a like covert narcissist side of like, oh, look at me, like I gave you this,
like being showy for Christmas. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that happened.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like I would always he would literally not get me anything like the entire year, or it would be like a couple of like small things, and then Christmas would come, and then it would be like boom, all this like stuff, and I was just like, what?
It was to prove that I'm a good person.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, not that like I minded because it was things that I wanted or needed or whatever, but it was also like kind of shocking because it's not. I was like, it just made me wonder, why don't you get me some of those gifts throughout the year? Because then here we are at Christmas, like spending a bunch of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like part of that with like the gift giving and things like that, even around like holidays or birthdays or like special events and stuff like that, was kind of like throughout the rest of the year, like you weren't a thought. Like you didn't really matter. You know, it wasn't like I was like, oh, wonder what I could get for her today, or like wonder what would make her feel special. It was like, well, Christmas is here. Let me just get a list, check it off, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Because a lot of times he would always get me stuff on my list. Or it would be stuff that I had mentioned like a couple weeks prior, but that wouldn't be on my list because I was like, oh, that's expensive.
But it wasn't like I was getting you stuff. And I mean, probably still struggle with it now just because life has been transitioning so much. But it wasn't like you mentioned something in like February or March or April and I got it for you in like December. It was like, no, you mentioned something like close to that time and it was like, oh, perfect.
It was like October, November-ish. And then,
anything before that just didn't register or like didn't
It wasn't like a thing that it was like, okay, let's save up this money throughout the year to do that. It was like boom.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, I mean, definitely a little bit more aspects of love bombing that we want to admit starting off, I guess. You know, there's more of it there, but some of that is also like the intermittent reinforcement, the highs and lows, the ups and the downs, to get you confused or to get you to be at a place of like, oh, like it's a good relationship, or oh, I should stick around, or oh, I won't pay attention to X, Y, and Z because he says I'm doing that he's not doing this, or he says you know X, Y, and Z, right? So like there's definitely like some pieces of it that makes it really hard for people sometimes to like realize and see the differences. No, so for us there was like intermittent love bombing in one sense, like these like good moments or these highs in one sense, but then there a lot of times there just wasn't, right? Like it was just kind of like nothing, no acknowledgement, just I did my own thing and you just existed, right?
Yeah, it was like we were roommates.
Right. I mean, that's what it switched to and ultimately ended at before like you left and things like that. It was very much like roommate. What, looking at it now, like what would be the aspect of like, how do you know it's not love bombing now, I guess? Because that's kind of like part of the question of like love bombing versus showing up. Like, how do you know the difference, or like, how does it feel different, or like what's connected to it differently, I guess?
I think one of the most recent examples that I can give is this Christmas, ironically. But Ben got me a set of caraway pots and pans. And this, I did not mention this around Christmas time because we had just moved. I wasn't expecting any expensive gifts because obviously moving is expensive. Right. So I didn't even really, it was like an afterthought to me at that point. But that I actually mentioned earlier in the year. It was like around Mother's Day or after Mother's Day in the summer, like June-ish.
It was also on one of your lists though, I think.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
Or it
was on a list that I got like beforehand or something. I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I don't remember where I got it then. I thought I got it from a list.
No, because I just remember I sent it to you on Instagram one time, like in that time frame.
So I got
like
a
June.
link. I got a link someplace. Okay.
Like
I
was
found it someplace.
It was in like June or July, and I saw like an ad, and I started like researching more and more into it, and I was like, oh, these would be cool to get someday. Like I didn't say like I wanted them right then. I didn't say anything like that. And okay, just so you guys know, we like send each other on Instagram like reels like all the time. So he had to really like go back and find this link or save this link or something to be able to be able to get that. So it's not just something that I like told him, hey, this is what I want for Christmas. Like I didn't say that. So
Right.
to me, that was genuine because it wasn't like something that I'd even thought about. It wasn't even something that I had mentioned recently because
You
that
were
was
like
like
shocked,
6 months
that's for
ago.
sure.
Yeah, I was really shocked. Normally, I can figure out all of my gifts. The rest of the stuff that I had on my list, like he did get me, which is completely fine. Like my list was very short this year, so it wasn't like there was not very many options to choose from.
Right.
But as far as that, I felt that that was actual genuine, that he was trying to go out of his way to do something. And yeah, same thing with like my birthday. I guess that is on a list, but it wasn't something I actually specifically told him not to get it for me.
And I did, well, let's phrase this too, like, and I actually did the thing where I came to you and I was like, I know you told me that you don't want it, but here's the reasons why and here's what I want to do, versus in the past I just would have bought it anyways,
Yes, just to like
just to prove to you my
prove.
love, and like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
like it doesn't really matter, I can discount, push your opinion down and get you something that's like, well, why would this not be a good thing? I'm such an amazing person.
Right.
So
But
that's
he
different
genuinely
there.
like wanted to get it for me. He was like, "This is why I want to get this for you," and
Right.
he like laid it out, and I was like, "Okay."
Took a little convincing. But
It
yeah.
did. It did. But at least in that aspect, I felt that it was genuine and it wasn't just like he was trying to be showy or do whatever.
Right. And I would say too, like the other difference that I would come to the table with would just be like our interactions and our like connection. Like I think that that's a vastly different than, like whatever like little high was created on like earlier in the relationship. There's been like a slow battle back to developing like deep connection in relationship that
Yeah.
we haven't had before, or we haven't had for a long time, on like both ways, like connection piece. And so there's an aspect there of like the difference is, one, the intentionality, but then two, like the effort, because it's not easy. It's
Yeah.
not easy for us to both show up and be like, hey, we're here, like, ready to go. Like, we're here dealing with stress or life or kids or crazy dogs and stuff like that. And like
Yeah.
still being able to show up and be like, hey, like I still want to be able to connect, like
Yeah.
good example hasn't even happened yet. Actually, good example is going to be like after we finish this podcast and we have like plans of like going someplace. A lot of times you'd be at the place of being like, well, now I don't want to go because you're stressed. And I'd be like, but I do want to go because I want to be able to invest time, and I just have to figure it out. Like, I just have to figure out like the stress part. Now there's like some things that we've started to do at times that can even help with that. Like there's been many times where we've had to, make a quick drive to the store or a park or something like that. And it's like 20-minute drive, and you drive and I sit in the passenger seat and I'm like writing. And that's not the norm. Not that it's like a man thing that I have to drive, but I just normally always drive kind of thing. It's more of a control thing, I guess, but
Yeah, I just think it just became habit because starting out you
That's true.
didn't want me to drive, which was probably the
that was
control
the
part.
control. Yeah. 100%.
But now it's just natural for you to drive besides me.
Yeah. But it's not like we have to. So there's some days that like you drive and I work on stuff. So it's like it's trying to like be able to work together for that common goal of our connection, of us being able to grow, like work, change, help each other like move forward, that I think is different too from the aspect of love bombing. It's not just like, oh, all this kind of stuff, but it's actually like showing up. So I guess like part of the aspect I'm trying to get at with the aspect of love bombing versus like showing up is there's also this piece there of like genuineness, and I think like depth of like a depth of a connection, a depth of a vulnerability that you don't have with just getting like a dozen roses. Like there's a different depth between like just getting gifts or just getting like praise or attention, but like if that attention doesn't have like a depth to it or a vulnerability, like even me 6 months ago, me 12 months ago, me 2 years ago, there was a different depth to our relationship, but there was also a different depth to what I was bringing to the table, from like extremely shallow to more in depth than what we've been.
Yeah. And I think too, genuineness also comes with feeding into like somebody's like love language, because if he just randomly shows up with flowers, like sure, that's amazing for some people, but to me I'm just like like I'm just like so like if that would be part of his love bombing at some points, is he would just randomly show up for flowers. And for me to be like, I would actually genuinely appreciate it, because any other time of the day, he wouldn't give me like
Anything
5
wrong.
minutes.
Right.
So at that point, he was like at least love bombing me in that way. Now he will give me flowers on Valentine's Day, but other than that, like
every once in a while, but it's also different.
But
too.
it's different. But
I'm not
yeah,
showing
it's
up
not
with like roses or with another flower that's not like either your favorite or not something that you actually care about. I'm trying to actually get different flowers to make sure like it's actually the ones that you want. Versus like before, I just be like, it's roses. All girls love roses. Like, you should be happy with that. You know, that kind of
right. Yeah. So it's like genuine in that aspect of trying to figure out the person's likes. And the same thing with like notes before. I mean, not saying that anything of like a quick I love you note isn't bad, but that would be the extent of like your love notes. And now you occasionally will send me like stacks that are about me, saying like you're grateful, and like they're in depth and deep. They're not just like some they're not some like fluffy duffy like I love you and you're the best thing. Like it's not not that those are bad, but it's just the genuineness comes with the more in-depth stuff. So if your relationship is on the surface and you're getting these like random things, then it's most likely love bombing versus like actual genuineness.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely like another like level of like depth of intimacy, connection, like openness that I think a lot of people need to engage with, and that it's not like we haven't figured out. You know, we're still trying to figure it out. We're still trying to go through that. I mean,
we still struggle.
We've talked about before, like one of the commitments was like going on dates every single week, you know, and that makes it challenging when there's like some weeks, like, you know, next week when I'm out of town for a couple days, like it just makes it challenging to fit all the things into the week that we need to fit into the week.
Yeah.
But like that's just a commitment, and it's scheduled out, so like it's going to happen, you know, because we have to like honor that and like stay on track. But I mean, that's been a huge part. And then the other aspect is like the aspect of like the adventure dates. Like that's something that pushes both of us in one sense.
Yeah.
Like it's not just me, but it definitely is me. But then it pushes like both of us at times to do something that's out of our comfort zone, to do something that's like out of our bubble. But like I typically, it's almost like at times there's almost like apprehension of like, and then we like do it, and then we're like, and then like we actually do it, and we're like, oh, like that was actually kind of cool. Like we actually had fun.
Some of them, not all of them. The one that we most recently did, I really enjoyed. I can do like
which one?
The nostalgic one. We could just talk about like a date one time.
Well, to do one that's really just dates. But yeah, no, I mean, there's like different ones that are like fun, and there's different ones. I mean, they're all good, but it's like it's pulling something out. It's getting something. And when you start to have a relationship that doesn't have not just adventure dates, but doesn't have a depth to it, like that's where you start to be like, is this love bombing, or is this just like them? Like what is actually going on?
Right.
And I think that's some of the difference in where our relationship is now, is being able to go to deeper depths of relationship, of connection, of vulnerability, of honesty that I never thought we'd be there. Like I never thought that was possible, or that it was possible to go to that level with you. You know, I just didn't think of that.
I think too, to like simplify love bombing, I feel like it's one to just like keep you like drawn in, but it's also something that's like forced in one sense. Like they're not gonna come across as like it's forced, but in one sense like it is like they're, well, I need to do this to like keep them interested in check the box type thing. Yeah. Versus if it's genuine, then it's gonna be like you're gonna be able to like, I don't know, I can just tell that it's like genuine now versus like checking the box, because there would be times
but back then it wasn't as clear.
Oh no, back then, because it was just like I was like in this fog and like haze. But I think that now, knowing that our relationship wasn't deep and it was based on like surface of like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. Like it was like very acquaintances basically. Like there was no depth to it.
And I think the thing too, I would just kind of preface for everybody like listening, is the one aspect of, if you would have known back then, just knowing about the love bombing wouldn't have fixed anything.
No.
And so like that's the piece of like, if you're struggling today, like wondering like, are they love bombing? Are they showing up? Like, not that that's a bad question to ask, but there's probably a lot of other questions of like, how are they demonstrating care? How are they showing honesty? How are they actually like showing up as a human being, as a person, as a man or a woman in the relationship? And what are the toxic traits? Like a whole bunch of other things, which I think are valid too to be able to put out, because there's this aspect of like, if you would have found out like, oh, this is love bombing, but everything else was still in the fog, it wouldn't really matter.
It wouldn't. I would just been like, oh, love bombing. Okay, cool.
whatever that is. Like,
yeah, like at that point, it was like whatever that is, because you don't necessarily know, like, you have to dive deep into getting to the root of like the toxicity. Like, what is the toxic problem?
Right. What is all like the pieces of it versus just one aspect?
Because like love bombing is just like one little tiny piece.
Right. One way a lot of times that I say that narcissists try to distort reality, that they try to be able to change or color your perspective in the moment so that you're not actually viewing of what's happening, or you're not actually holding them accountable. So like if you're struggling with like, you know, hey, is this real? Is this not? And it's around an event, you know, it's around calling them out. It's around like you catching them in something. It's around like something they're doing. Like it probably isn't the real thing. It's probably just a way to be able to change your perspective so that you're looking at something else that might not actually be true, but is there a way to be able to pull the wool over your eyes?
Yeah, because a lot of times gaslighting and love bombing go hand in hand.
Yeah, a lot of times they can look similar as far as like how they just walk through of like, hey, I'm going to change your perspective, I'm going to distort your reality, I'm going to color, you know, the perspective that you see, all to be able to get past the shame, the guilt, the accountability, the responsibility to continue moving forward and doing whatever they do. So anyways, that's what we got for today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Sorry, we're a little frazzled from doing this like 3 times
The
now.
Intro is not our normal, but that's just
fine.
The real life.
It's probably more of what we'll get to more and more of just having it just be natural. This is what it is. We don't have a script. We don't have stuff we go off of. We just come in and talk. So
we have a topic and we just...
There you go. Right?
Go from there.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. You all have a blessed day, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.